What's up, Dragon Brood? We're going to come back and try a thing we did about 3 weeks ago now, where we did a play by play of me critiquing myself. Also, this is kind of an opportunity for me to unveil, I guess, version 2 of the Ikoria Gruul deck. I'll have a video on that probably here in the next day or so. This isn't the final version of it, so I don't necessarily want to put that out there just yet. Feel free to take what you want from the video. I'm going to get it cleaned up and give you an official video in another 24, 48 hours. Just give me a little bit of time. I'm working on it. But yeah, everybody seemed to really like watching me critique myself. And this was a pretty interesting game to talk about, so I figured it was really neat to put up. So, or really a match, I should say. So let's get into. Wait, actually, before we get into that, why don't you like this video and subscribe to the channel to do me a small favor? And while you do that, I'll get everything prepped. Okay, so in this match, it was me playing against we're going to call it just a Rakdos aggro deck. It was black-red cards, playing an aggressive strategy. I don't really know what we'd call it at this point. It's something completely new, as a lot of decks are, that we're seeing here kind of in the early goings of Ikoria, which is good. It's not a bad thing. I will tell you, we get a little surprised by some stuff out of this deck, so it'll be fun to let y'all see kind of what happened to me. But let's hop into the games, and we'll kind of just really critique how I play this, because I'm also learning some of the new cards as well, and there's some tough decision making that kind of goes on along the way. Let me make sure this is muted so you don't have to hear the game sounds over me while we're talking. All right, so here we take a quick mulligan. And yeah, and that first hand was pretty easy. Right now, we're kind of in an environment where you're looking for a hand that has at least one removal spell and an early play, or two removal spells. That's kind of what we're looking at right now. There's a lot of creature-based, very aggro decks, so you want to be able to take out a couple of early threats. Plus, there's some just key creatures. Like if you're playing against Winota, you want to be able to kill their goblin they played before that. You know, if it's the red decks, you want to get rid of something early. If they're playing against the sacrifice deck, you want to be able to kill like a Priest of Forgotten God, something like that. So here we're kind of just waiting to see what we're going to actually get to kill. And the best thing to kill showed up. So it's one of the best cards actually in those matchups that you want to get rid of. And then here we're just like, okay, we'll play the Bone Crusher Giant. And actually, let me talk about that for a second too. The reason you want to use the Bone Crusher Giant instead of using the Scorching Dragonfire there is that it's the same amount of mana. And the creature you're killing doesn't really matter if it's in the graveyard or not. At this stage, we're not totally sure what this deck is, but it could be just Rakdos Knights. And if so, having an additional damage for 2 mana out of the Scorching Dragonfire could be the difference or not from being able to kill something like a Rotting Regisaur. You know, in this case, not that much of a concern anyway, so you spend your 2 mana, you kill the Knight, then you just spend your 3 mana next turn playing your Giant. Because your opponent with red-black isn't going to play anything you're really worried about next turn. Worst case scenario, they have a haste creature, but you can block it anyway. So yeah, you just let it ride and play that. Sit on the other one, and maybe you get a chance to kill a creature that you want to not even go to the graveyard. So yeah, so here, I don't really know what we're playing against. I'm kind of assuming it's in the Rakdos Knights, but then this guy shows up, and it's like, oh no, this is the new menace creature. Maybe I got this all wrong. All right, but that's okay. This is why we have 2 removal spells, and we're pretty good here. The reason I go ahead and just play the Questing Beast here is that the opponent isn't going to be able to effectively block either one of these. If they block the Giant, then it's just as good as using a removal spell anyway. If they don't block the Giant, we're not really concerned about anything happening next turn. Because assume maybe they play another creature, then we get our choice of what creature to kill. Also, if they choose to just play 1 2-mana creature and leave mana up so they can block the Giant and kill it in a trade, then we just go ahead, let them block, do their thing, and then with their ability on the stack, we go ahead and just kill it with the Dragonfire. Now there, I want to say this was weird, because when they played the volley for 1 damage, my thought was like, what's up with that? Like, why is there a random like deal 1 to everything in this list? That's such a weird card. So immediately when you're playing against opponents and they play cards like that you're not used to seeing, you really kind of have 2 immediate thoughts. Either they're playing because of budget and they just don't have some of the cards they want. Usually that applies more to paper than arena. Or there's some weird gimmicky thing they're trying to do with their deck. I couldn't immediately think of anything, so I'm like, okay, maybe this is just a weird budget call. Or maybe they're really worried about killing a bunch of 1 toughness tokens from like an Anax or something. So figured just let it ride. It's just one of those things that's in the back of my mind about like, what could you do with this? It's kind of the way you need to always be thinking anyway about the matchups, just to kind of be on top of like what plays should you make knowing this card exists now. Yeah, and here you notice I kind of start to play the Dragonfire. It's like, no, we can still wait. There's no hurry here. But the thing is, regardless, we're probably going to play it during the end step here, regardless of what we kill, just so we can load up a Vivien next turn. And the opponent's low enough that we're kind of leaving them with no good blocks. So you just take out the bigger creature, because that's the one they can pump and actually kill something with. So yeah, and then the opponent decides that's it. So I never got to see any real reason why they wanted to play the other deal 1 to everything, but I at least know it's there now. So in sideboard, every creature we saw was a red creature. So we're bringing in the red cat melees because we may get to just use those on the cheap, which is nice. Extra Scorching Dragonfire, sure. Removing the Embercleave because it's probably not how we're going to win. No matter how I tried to shape it in my head, I couldn't think of a way that like we need Embercleave to win because our creatures are all bigger. So if we're losing the creature removal battle and they're just out creaturing us, we probably just lose anyway. Though I think I contemplated Gem Razor just because it's a trample creature and it's a 4/4. But, I figured they're probably going to bring in Noxious Grasp and stuff anyway. So now it's just a matter of what do we take out of the deck. Being on the play, went ahead and removed Robber the Rich and took out a Vivien. And that was mostly because Vivien's going to be a bit slower. We're on the draw, so it's probably not the card we're going to be looking for. We're going to be spending more time dealing with our opponent's cards, most likely. Yeah, now this one's tough. As you can see, this list actually has Everquill Phoenix in it, whereas the one I posted a few days ago did not. I will explain some strategy around that and why it exists when I put up the other list here in a day or two. Yeah, this is kind of a good start for the opponent. This isn't what we like to see. It's kind of tough because you get set up to where you kind of have to use the Bone Crusher Giant, not actually use the Paradise Druid like you want to. Because the Paradise Druid doesn't effectively block anything. Here, we just go ahead and take a shot to kill this. And sadly, this is a tough spot because you really want to kill the Judith, but the problem is once that Dreadhorde Butcher ends up getting an attack in there, it's going to be a 4-power creature, and then it becomes a real nuisance for us. Plus, at that point, even if we block and kill it, or they find a way to block one of our attackers, we're still going to take 4 or 5 damage from it, and that's not real exciting. Yeah, this list also had Flame Spill, so it was like, there was a lot of cards. I'm like, what's going on with this list? Maybe they're just worried about killing 4-power creatures, or they sideboarded it in because they knew we had bigger stuff, which is totally possible. I mean, I'm not going to count that out. You know, sometimes the obvious thing is the right thing. All right, opponent plays the other menace creature. And then here I was struggling with what to do. And I was like, that could work, and then maybe play the other Questing Beast. And I thought, okay, well maybe this is just the next best thing. And I figure here, if the opponent blocks something, we don't really care. And see, and then that concerned me, because the opponent should have been blocking the Questing Beast with their 3/2, then when it dies, hit it for 1 more. Then I was like, okay, Pestilent Spirit. Oh no, like that was the thing where I just like, right as it happened and I saw the Pestilent Spirit, I was like, this is exactly why the opponent's playing the deal 1 damage to everything. So just to back that up, for those of you that didn't catch it, let's run through the cards here real quick. So the opponent casts Pestilent Spirit. It's a Menace, Death Touch, 3 mana, 3/2, which is actually okay on its own, and it fits into the Menace decks right now. So good call there by the opponent. But your Instants and Sorcery spells also have Death Touch. So any instants you have that do damage are also going to kill whatever they hit. That being said, the opponent wastes no time paying their 1 mana to Blazing Volley, which now has Dust Touch, dealing 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. Well, we're all going to take 1 damage from a Death Touch spell that kills all of our things. Yeah, so the Phoenix would have been the better call, but at that point we hadn't seen that spell, so we had no idea. Or we'd seen the spell, we just hadn't seen the spirit, is the problem. So yeah, at this point, I'm really grasping at straws. I don't see any way out of this. Our best bet, as far as I can tell, is just play a Questing Beast. Hope the opponent doesn't kill us, but even then, there's no real out, because when a creature dies, Druid is going to deal an additional 1. So we attack, they block, we take 1, go to 6, and then the opponent attacks for 5, and then no matter what we do after that, we're still dead, because the opponent is at 8 life. So I just concede, go to game 2. And I have to say, the opponent got us. I mean, we got, is the best way to put it. No real complaints. Here I did do some finagling, trying to figure out sideboard situation and what I wanted to do, especially being on the play, but ultimately I just decided the creatures and cards we had were good enough. It wasn't really worth messing with there. And I didn't want to take the Phoenixes out, because those give us a chance to get a creature back if things went sideways like they did game 1. That one we mulliganed only because we had the 2 Domri's Ambush, but we didn't have any early creatures to use with them. So having those removal spells weren't going to do us any good. Here we get rid of a forest. However, then we drew the Paradise Druid, so obviously play that, since it saves us some pain if we don't draw a land. Now if we draw a land, this was the other question, is do we go ahead and load the Phoenix, or do we just play a creature? And it's like, there's a lot of arguments to be made for playing and actually let's stop and really talk about that, because as good as the Phoenix is, it probably wasn't the right play here necessarily. I think there's more opportunity in just going ahead and playing the Scorching Dragonfire, getting rid of their blocker, playing the Robber of the Rich, and then attacking for 4, because we're still going to get 1 more damage in this turn than we would have got otherwise. But because we're emptying our hand effectively, we're going to be down to 1 card. We would get a card from the opponent that we could potentially play either, well, it would be tapped out on mana, so we could play it next turn potentially from the Robber of the Rich, in addition to having the choice of playing that card and or playing the Phoenix. So it's not a bad deal, and they would have 1 less creature, so there's arguments to be made. But I decided ultimately on just playing the Phoenix and just trying to go for max damage. If they for some reason killed our creatures or swept the board with the next spell or 2, then we go ahead and crack the feather and get the Phoenix back. Also, so y'all are aware, the reason the Phoenix is a 5/5 is you put it on top of the Pelt Collector, and then you still get the effects of all the things on the card. So in this case, it has a +1/+1 counter, because the Pelt Collector already had a 1 on it. So we got to attack for 5. And then this becomes an interesting issue, because part of the question came down to, do we just sit on the Scorching Dragonfire to try to kill the spirit if it shows up again? And for my money, the answer was yes. So we just kind of take it slow, let it ride, don't let anything crazy happen. I mean, I was pretty certain we were safe. I would have felt better if the Pelt Collector was also a haste creature of some kind. Maybe like a Gruul Spellbreaker or something, but unfortunately it's not. Exactly, then they had the Pestilent Spirit, but they didn't have the volley to go with it. So we're just going to kill something anyway. Yeah, it was really kind of sizing up, who do we want to kill? Mostly because if we draw a haste creature, then it's just game over anyway. So you want to go ahead and clear the path and make sure that if the opponent decides to block, and it's like, well, we didn't draw it, so it doesn't really matter. And then I was deciding, you know what, just get in for 5, because if the opponent ultimately it's just like, the argument is you just get in for 5, and if the opponent doesn't block, cool, they're down to 1. But if we go and attack with everything, then if the opponent blocks, they lose all their creatures and we just take 2 damage. So that's fine too. And then when we picked up the Judith from the opponent, we kind of knew that was game over, because at that point, the next creature that dies, opponent's just going to take damage to kill them. So yeah, we were kind of in a no-lose situation at this point. It was just a matter of able to get out there with the 5/5. The opponent couldn't kill it. I mean, even if they had Flame Spell, it goes up to being a 5/5 instead of a 4/4. And I think that locked this one up pretty well for us. Yeah, Masker Girl doesn't really do anything in this particular situation. Even if we didn't have the Judith, Judith would die, then the Phoenix would take a total of -3, and that would be it. So let's just kind of do a little wrap up on what we learned. So that was a pretty interesting matchup in a lot of ways, where we're talking about like where's the best place to play a mutate card. We got to see where that came up. Unfortunately, didn't get to see Vivian in action in that matchup, which is my new favorite card, by the way. And I think we also got to see that there's a lot of openings for strategy with Ikoria. Even something like the Spirit that has Death Touch and gives all your spells Death Touch, right? Like, it's been around, it just hasn't had a deck where it made sense. Now that you have these other things that care about a creature having Menace, a creature having Death Touch, you know, now this type of card has a home, and it opens the door for things like that to happen, where you can just get wiped out, which was crazy because I hadn't even thought about that being a thing. I'm sure that was on some message forum or some deck list somewhere. I just somehow missed it, and it definitely caught me off guard. So that was the thing. But the reason I do like these types of recap play-by-play videos is that it allows me to kind of really talk to y'all and criticize myself. You know, if I'm going to be critical of anybody, it might as well be me. And it allows you to kind of step through it with me, see the logic, and then decide, like, sometimes plays are close, sometimes they're wrong. You can't be results oriented, but with the information you have at that point in time, is it the right choice or not? So anyway, I hope you liked it. Please like this video, and again, if you haven't, subscribe to the channel and come on back, because we're going to have more fun videos throughout Ikoria season, because there is a lot happening right now, and I imagine this is going to be a standard format that is evolving very quickly. And like I said, I'll have the video up here in the next day or two with the updated Gruul list as well, for those of you that are looking for it, because I have a lot of Gruul people that come to the channel. But that's all I have for you today, and we will catch you next time.